Hitting ISIS and Putin where it hurts while helping Americans here at home. Pump more oil in the United States and export it overseas to push down energy prices everywhere. Ronald Reagan did something similar to that. Some say it helped end the Cold War. Would it work again? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Steve Forbes, Mike Ozanian, Sabrina Schaefer, Elizabeth McDonald, Rick Unger, and John Tamny. Sabrina, does it sound like a good idea?
It sure does. Not only would it bring the cost of oil down here at home, but let's remember that Putin's regime is largely made up of income from his oil and gas exports. So this would give us tremendous leverage, the ability to decrease the price of this important commodity for them and give us leverage in terms of helping stop some of the aggression that we're seeing coming from Russia today.
And Steve, not to mention it would help consumers here at home. Oil prices, by the way, have come down precisely as we have had this 17% increase in domestic production right here. Look at this. This is good for consumers, and it would be bad for Putin. Sounds like a double whammy.
It would be, and a key thing, too, is the dollar has been stable. That's what happened in the 1980s. Reagan also removed price controls. And another thing we should look at, David, is stepping up approval of licenses to export natural gas, liquefied natural gas. That would knock Putin's power down because Western Europe's now dependent on Russian gas. If we were exporting cheap gas, undermining, that would take away significant power for him.
So, Mike, a strong dollar, increase production, allow exports. We could do a lot of things to increase oil production here in the U.S.
David, unless we do more of what Reagan did, the impact of what you just said is going to be very marginal. If we want to defeat ISIS and put Putin in retreat, we also have to do things like build up our military, which this president has completely undercut.
But we have to start somewhere, EMAC, and maybe this is a place to do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Energy is a weapon in the arsenal that we can use. You're absolutely right. And look at what happened. And John Tamny and Steve are absolutely right. A strong dollar really lowered oil prices during the 80s. That left Gorbachev scrambling at the end, trying to borrow money from Germany because USSR, Soviet Union, was bankrupt. We've seen turmoil in the Middle East every time oil goes down. We see turmoil in Venezuela every time oil goes down. It will hit ISIS really hard. I'll tell you something. The reason why Putin's in the Ukraine is because of its big gas and oil reserves, also Crimea as well, David.
Right. Good point. John, we should mention something. By all of this oil production increase that we've seen in the U.S., yes, the dollar has something to do with it, but it's on private lands. We could increase oil production much more if they released the public land rights. Those have gone down tremendously under President Obama. Federal drilling permits have gone down from 66,000 in 2008 to 6,600 in 2008 to 3,700 in 2013. So increase oil production, and it's good for everybody.
Well, I'm all for that, but the Reagan model is really a lot simpler. A stronger dollar brings down the oil price. It's plain and simple. It had very little to do with pumping oil and a lot to do with the strong dollar. What that would do is it would be a magnet for investment into the United States. It would boost our economy at the same time while bringing down commodities across the board, and it would hurt those countries, a lot of these backward countries like Russia that are reliant on commodities. So if you fix the dollar, you win this.
All right, but Rick, there's nothing wrong with increasing oil production here in the U.S., is there?
Well, not necessarily, but I think I got to say, John Tamny brought up a very critical point. I think we'd all agree that if we can do something to put more pressure on Putin, we all agree that's a great idea. The problem is the United States can't do it alone. The oil companies, who would also, I'm afraid, suffer some reduction in profits if the price continues to drop, they might have something to say about this and may not be so anxious to play along. That's why John's right. There was more government policy during the Reagan era and how that played out than I think what you have now.
Rick is right.
Let's get something straight here. The reason why mainstream Republicans did not want Ronald Reagan was because he was not a crony capitalist. He didn't care what the big companies thought about. Obama does, and so do the mainstream Republicans.
And Sabrina, hold on a second, because Sabrina, these companies do the right thing for their profits. They have been increasing oil production. Yes, the price has been going down, but they've increased their market share, and they could increase their market share much more if they allowed us to export oil overseas, which we don't have right now.
Right, and there's tremendous demand in places like Japan and South Korea. And I think one thing that Rick sort of hit on that is correct is that we do need more support from our European allies. And so forget just oil and gas, it's also natural gas, as Steve mentioned. We are not quite ready to export it, but maybe as early as 2015 we can, and this could cut down on Russia's, they provide 30% of Europe's natural gas. So this could cut down tremendously for that,
right,
and would give them, to help us more in some of these conflicts.
And Putin, Ronald Reagan did drive Russia, Steve, into bankruptcy in the 1980s. We could do that again. I mean, they have 68% of all their exports come from oil. If we bring down the price of oil, that would hurt Russia a lot.
It would. As John McCain said, Russia's a gas station today, and there's not much else to that economy, and would quickly drive it. Already now, much of Russian oil is above the world price of oil, and if it goes down a few more bucks, it's going to increase the pressure. Having Europe help us out would be good. And one area they could do it, David, Germany and France now virtually ban fracking for natural gas. If they ramp that up, that would be another nail in Putin's coffin.
And Emac, I don't want to forget about ISIS either, because ISIS's expenses, yes, they are growing, but as they grow, their expenses grow too, and they're going to become more and more dependent on selling the oil in their territory. They're making about $3 million a day right now from oil. If we bring down that cost, their costs will go up. That will hurt them.
That's exactly right, David. Actually, it's really expensive to run a government, and ISIS is now figuring that out.
That's right.
Their expenses are a lot higher than what the oil money is coming in the door for ISIS. So, that's the thing. That's the ticket. I say drive ISIS off the face of the earth by lowering the price of oil, by doing more oil exports from the United States. And I have to address John Tamny again. When oil prices spiked in the 70s, and because of the weak dollar policies, remember, the dollar was really weakening during the 70s. Carter was driven out of office because oil prices went up. That also led to the demise of our own U.S. president. It helped lead to.
And Ronald Reagan, by the way, let's just make it real simple, John Tamny. Ronald Reagan liked a strong dollar. Period. It was that simple. He said a strong dollar represents a strong economy. That's why he liked a strong dollar. There's nothing wrong with being for a strong dollar and increasing oil production by releasing some of these permits on federal lands, is there?
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying we would be producing less oil here if we had a strong dollar. That would be a good thing. Let's remember the 70s and the 2000s were the two big oil booms in the U.S. for bad periods of economic growth. It's when the dollar is strong that investment flows into higher margin goods like technology that animate our economy a lot more. So a strong dollar would lead us back into the economy of the mind, the pro-growth, and it would also bring down some of our perceived enemies around the world. You don't need to pump oil to fix this.
But
the strong dollar is what works.
It would help our cause. And Rick, that's the point. If we released the domestic oil producers here, gave them the chance to export their oil, our oil, over to Europe, wouldn't it be better for the Europeans to be dependent on us than on Putin?
Absolutely. But, again, I got to respond, and a lot of it is a response to what Mike said. Look, it's not about the U.S. It's not about Ronald Reagan not caring what the oil companies thought. The oil companies are the ones who drill it, pump it, and sell it. It's not the United States government. So let's not, confuse things here. So I agree with your point, David. I really do. But you got to keep in mind that we as the United States are not going to be selling anybody oil. You have to make it in a way so that the oil producers want it.
Well, but Sabrina, hold on a second. Sabrina, they've already been doing it. That's the point. Oil producers have been producing more. We are now #1 for oil production in the entire world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia. It ain't for nothing that happened. It's because we are producing more. Shouldn't we keep encouraging that trend?
Absolutely. That trend, as well as the natural gas, which we're now outpacing Russia on natural gas as well. So I think both of these areas, tremendous opportunity. The oil companies do see that opportunity in these countries around the world where there's demand, where they would like to not be dependent on countries like Russia for their supply. I think that the companies are going to fall right in line with this because there's great, tremendous bottom lines to benefit.
Bottom line, we've run out of time. First and last word from Sabrina. President Obama's big speech to take on ISIS, missing a big threat on how the ISIS terrorists want